This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
What's up, peeps? Welcome back to Rebranding Safety. Today we are talking all about mental health and kind of specifically burnout within mental health as well. Let's jump into it and try to tell you some more about it. Let's go.
The problem in safety isn't deviation, it's complexity.
Health and safety has gone mad.
Health and safety is trying to unpick having gone mad in the past.
There's no one solution and one problem. The problem is that we are looking for one solution.
Does the structure of the team allow them to flourish?
Feel safe enough to be uncomfortable.
The environment defines our behaviours.
People aren't the problem, they're the solution.
Rebranding Safety, crushing the stereotype. Brought to you by Risk Fluent.
What's up, peeps? Welcome back to Rebranding Safety. Rebranding Safety is a YouTube channel and podcast doing exactly what it says on the tin. So if you're new here, hit subscribe and the bell and follow and whatever it is you're listening / watching on. You know, hit some magical algorithm type buttons. Rebranding Safety is brought to you by Risk Fluent, which is our own health and safety consultancy. We deliver two types of services: technical, which is the health and safety that we all know and love. Fire safety it fits within that. Health and safety training, ISOs, retainers, competent persons, whatever you want to call it. All of that normal safety stuff. If you need some help, let us know, whether it's one-off projects or long-term relationships and partnerships, we are there for you. Or we offer the transformational side of things as well, where maybe you've built quite a nice foundation and you're like, we're not really getting quite the behaviours that we want. Or maybe you've had a long period of like really good health and safety performance, and then all of a sudden you had a bad run and you want to try and work out what that is. Maybe you just want a bit of a culture change program. Give us a call. We'll have a chat, see if we can help you solve whatever problem it is that you've had. But otherwise, Risk Fluent is all about building confidence, not just compliance. So if you need some help, give us a call. If you just want to chat, still give us a call. Okay, in today's episode, we're talking to a gentleman who I absolutely love, a gentleman called Alex Clarke. Alex Clarke is a member of Project Mollitiam. That's how I know him. He joined PM a while ago, and just every time he comes on, I love him. He's got such a beautiful way of speaking, but yet really like relaxed way of speaking as well. He has some blinds, which I love. He's funny as fuck, which is helpful, but also very passionate about his topic. So Alex has an intimate relationship with burnout and mental health, and he very openly and honestly tells his story for us today to hopefully bring some awareness to you all and get a bit of a better understanding of what burnout might look like. But ultimately, we all have our own stories, right? And I think most people listening to us have probably experienced it in some way. And then we start to talk about kind of the campaigns and how we deal with that stuff, because we were essentially feeling like a lot of it was a bit like a plaster on a bullet wound, a bit like lip service. So have a listen, let us know what you think. But anyway, that's enough from me. Let's jump into the episode and let Alex introduce himself. Right, Alex, welcome to Rebranding Safety, mate.
Hello there, how you doing?
Not too bad, thank you, mate. Not too bad. Thank you very much. Do you want to introduce yourself for those of the listeners that might not know you?
My name's Alex. I operate as a occupational safety advisor for a local authority in the grand, wonderful north of England. I've been in the safety world now this is my third year. It's a second career for me. I did my first part of my professional life as a professional model maker that then branched in from architectural work to museums, visitor centres, attractions, ultimately theme parks. I learnt an immense amount of an awful lot of things at that time, but I also learned about the limits of human endurance, shall we say. And on that journey, I experienced two quite profound burnouts. So that's one of the reasons why I thought it would be a good idea to come on the pod with you and kibitz about those, and maybe have the listeners think about World Mental Health Week is either coming up or it's past, depending on when this goes out, to maybe reflect on, okay, what are we doing with that? How are we using that? Who is it reaching, and what can we maybe do better?
I mean, I've always just to completely pull it away from the subject that you have just beautifully introduced like a perfect radio host, I'm
You're
always
welcome.
really curious about what a career as a model builder is. The amount of times you've been on a PM call and introduced yourself to like a new member and been like, yeah, I previously was a model builder. And I'm like, what an awesome job. But clearly there were some issues that which we'll talk about. But
Yep.
wow, like that just cool. When I just think models, I just think like Warhammer. That's all I can think of, really.
Somebody's got to design them and make them.
Yeah.
No, I didn't do anything as kind of, cool and funky as Warhammer or kind of Hornby trains or anything like that. I actually started out as an architectural model maker. So my role, and I fell into model making because I was trying to be a graphic designer back in the late 90s when everybody seemed to be wanting to be a graphic designer. And my tutor, bless his heart, took me aside and said, Alex, you're a bit shit at this, but we noticed you're a bit shit at this, but we noticed that every opportunity you get, you're trying to do something in 3 dimensions. So you're doing also, have you ever thought of being a model maker? And I'm thinking, no, I never even thought that was a job. Okay, looked into it. Turns out that there was quite a scene back then. And I thought, okay, fine. So I went to model making college. There is a thing.
What the fuck is model making college?
Well, I've got to be honest with you, it was a bit shit too. I went in there with hobbyist knowledge because I'd always built models. It had always been, as my brother rightly pointed out, probably too late for me to have responded appropriately to it, but it was my happy place. If I was in school and I'd been bullied, which I took a lot of, or I'd had a bad day, or if I was feeling down, I'd go into my bedroom and I'd just stick bits of shit together and make things out of it. And it was my happy place. And then I found, wow, I could do this and get money for it. So I went to a college in Oxfordshire. Not quite close enough to Oxford to say I went to Oxford, but it's good enough for me. Studied it for a year, learned absolutely nothing, but I got work experience at a company in Clapham in London, which built architectural models for architects for the purpose of planning applications, for the purpose of testing method, testing design, for the purpose of marketing. I've got a whole bevy of stories and weird things that occurred in that strange place in 1997. But I did that for 8 years. I was freelancing around the architectural model making services in London. And then I eventually moved up to York, where I took a position as the head of department for a museums and visitor centres interactive manufacturing company, where we would be making scale models or mechanical electronic interactives for museums. For example, things like Eureka in Halifax, the Me and My Body Gallery. We did work for the new Museum of Liverpool, designing models, interactives, audiovisual displays, set works, thematics. Over time, the company grew, and we ended up branching out into providing the thematics for theme parks. So if you've ever been to Thorpe Park with the Saw roller coaster, we did all of the big circular saws and the injections and all the the shotgun on a pivot marker. So we did all of that. So yeah, it all started out because I was a shit graphic designer.
And how does one get into safety off the back of that?
You get made redundant because the company got so big and it was unable to really sustain itself. It had gone PLC and it just wasn't quite able to sustain because it's such a weird and fungible subject, because what you're basically doing is you're creating and inventing the most novel, unique, and you're inventing shit. Everybody wants something different. You can't just go to a shop and just buy a different thing off the shelf or create, buy something unique. We had to design and make everything. So sometimes things worked, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes you need a lot more R&D, and you could never guarantee your margins. And that was the problem. And so we had a couple of jobs that were harder than others. And ultimately, in that, the company didn't survive. So I was made redundant. Where I ended up in safety was the fact that while I developed an awful lot of skill, because building models, you're dealing with materials, you're dealing with processes, you're also dealing with project management, production management, workshop management, health and safety, all of these things, training people, dealing with clients, dealing with suppliers. You don't actually really get any qualifications for any of it because it's all vocational. It's all learnt on the job. If you need to learn something, you just fucking get off your ass and learn it. And And so that's what I would do. When I was made redundant, I had an absolute shit ton of skill, but I couldn't hang my hat on any of it in an interview because I didn't have anything to qualify me. I only had a BTEC national diploma in graphics that I scraped through. So I had to basically start at the bottom again. So I'd gone from a middle management position and I ended up working as a healthcare assistant at our local hospital for a couple of years. Literally, and I'm not saying this to undermine any of the work that HCAs do, but I was basically a ward assistant. I was helping people with their care plans. I was, providing personal cares to people. I was nursing. I wasn't emotionally strong enough for that job. I will hasten to add. That is a incredibly powerfully strong-willed job that that people need to understand. It is fucking hard. And hat goes off to anybody in that field.
Yeah.
And then an opportunity arose at the my local authority to take on an apprenticeship as a safety dude. And I thought, I can transfer a bit of my old skill into this. I can travel a bit, I can bring a bit of who I used to be into this field. And 3 years later, here I am.
An award-winning apprentice, I might add.
I will have you. You might say that. I'm not going to blow my own trumpet, James.
I'll blow it for you, mate.
Thank you, darling.
So you beautifully introduced the topic, and I took us completely off of that. But that was really insightful. So thank you very much. It was nice to know a little bit more about you. So why did you approach to talk about burnout initially?
I think it's because it's something that I've not really heard anybody properly talk about. It's something that happens to people, and it's one of those things that you don't realize it's happening until it's happened. Okay. And it's something that I think we, as both safety professionals and also people who are involved with decision-making processes in businesses or organizations of any kind, we need to really get out in front of this, because there are tools, there are resources out there to help people. And where I become frustrated with the provision that we have and things like World Mental Health Week and National Mental Health Day and awareness campaigns, is the fact that they seem to be a little bit after the fact. Okay, this is the support that happens after you've blown a gasket, when really there's things that we should be focusing on putting in place to say, okay, how can we stop people going over the fucking cliff? And I mean that both figuratively and also, factually, and that because I was driven to the point of near suicide on more than one occasion during my, my mental journey, if you like. And I'm happy to talk about any of that, because I see, from my perspective as somebody who is a depression and suicide ideation survivor, it's a way of me getting value out of my experience. It comes to nothing if I go through all of that hell and I drag my illustrious wife and my friends and my colleagues through that journey with me, which is fucking hard for everybody involved. And I don't get some positivity out of it. So I thought it would be nice to sit down and just get this story out there, so that maybe, again, if this show goes out before or after World Mental Health Week, we can maybe reflect on what we've actually done. How are we reaching people? What are we talking to people about? Are we doing this to people rather than are we doing it with them? Are we having a conversation, or are we just having a diatribe? And I think that to me is that driver. I think as well, I was inspired by your illustrious colleague Colin Nottage's his takeover podcast, and that from the Interesting Health and Safety podcast, where Elisa and Crystal did a reflection on World Women's Day. And I was listening to it and I was thinking, I completely get your point. Every day should be fucking Women's Day. Why do we need to make a big fucking deal out of it? It's because we're not doing fucking enough. It's a good thing that it's out there, but I don't think it really satisfies the need. I think we're doing it. There's an element of tokenism there. So while, and I think, I agree with their conclusions and that it's good that we have it, but I wish we didn't bloody need it, and I think World Mental Health Week and World Mental Health Day kind of fall into that same trap. We all receive those torrents up. Hopefully, again, it's that weird paradox. but hopefully we receive all this, oh, these are resources, have this, have that. I mean, I'm part of our Wellbeing Champions scheme at the authority, and I'll get 5, 6, 7 emails a week of all these resources that you can go to, oh, please distribute it. And it's just so haphazard. It's this avalanche of, oh, look at this, when actually what I'm wanting to hear, or what I'm wanting to say is, okay, we're going to actually get people together and say, as people who have got certified wonky brains, or you've got your own specific emotional or psychological needs, what can we do to help you not fall off the cliff in the end anyway? What can we do to put in place to say, actually, let's prevent this, or let's manage this, rather than let's sweep up the pieces at the end when we'll send you off to Remploy, or we'll send you off to a self-referral, or we'll send you off to a support group, or we'll just give you a clap when you go to see CBT therapy, etc. So for me, I think it's about getting that conversation started with regard to burnout. I don't know how many people are familiar with burnout. I don't know whether or not anybody's experienced it firsthand. Well, correction, I'm sure that people have experienced it firsthand. I don't know whether people necessarily realize they have experienced it firsthand. Because like I say, burnout is something that occurs to you and you only realize it's really happened once it's happened. When I was saying before about the work I used to do, it was deadline based. It was time constrained. There were usually budgetary constraints. We had to make a profit. You usually have all of the problems with suppliers delivering on time. We were inventing things and creating novel solutions to very complicated and exciting projects. Now, don't get me wrong, it was fucking brilliant when it went well, but it can be very, very difficult when it doesn't. I started with a team of, 2014. I had a team of 3 under me, and I was working alongside another department, and we were involved with making models. The company had gone into public, it had gone public, it had become a PLC, and we suddenly had a completely different set of drivers. So instead of it being a cottage industry that had just grown, we now all of a sudden had to satisfy bigwigs and shareholders and people with laptops who were only concerned about the bottom line, rather than the intricacies of making a 1:50 scale model of the Giant's Causeway. The dynamic of the company had changed. It had gone from developing the portfolio to satisfying a turnover and satisfying margins. And what had happened was, the difficulty with model making is the fact that it's so labor intensive, it's so craft, it's very folksy. There is technology involved, but I can't just go out and buy a scale model of the liver buildings. You just can't do it. It's just not there. And even if you could, it would be the wrong size for what the client wants, because they want something different. So everything you do is hand built. Everything you do is started from scratch. So in doing that, it's labor intensive, it's materials intensive, and you can't absolutely guarantee you're going to make a 13, 15, 20% margin. Therefore, it was kind of moved away. The company had started to drift away from that bespoke unique selling point, the USP, and had gone a little bit more into unit construction, into larger construction areas that you could guarantee margins in better. I just hired 2 people to extend the size of the team at the request of the directorship. They wanted this to be a bigger thing. We're going to get loads of work in. It's going to be great. Let's do this. We're going to get loads of investment. We're going to have work coming out of our arsehole. It's going to be fantastic. I extended the team, and then suddenly our workflow stopped, because the company had moved its direction from being the bespoke, very, very unique stuff, and we'd gone into a more shop fitting. That was the work that was coming in. So suddenly my department was then effectively redundant. So I started trying to generate business myself. I started reaching out to architectural clients. I started reaching out to, marketing, and that I was trying to, okay, look, let's get some work in. I've got guys sitting here, or they've been lent out to other departments to augment them. I need to bring work in. I wasn't really getting a great deal of support from the higher ups, because the work that we were doing wasn't exactly that. We weren't bringing in millions and millions of pounds. What we were bringing in were a couple of £1,000 to £20,000 jobs that would not be possible for other companies, wouldn't exactly satisfy our friends down in the city of London, but they would provide the company with that unique selling point. I wasn't able to bring in the work. My team were basically lent out to other departments because they were incredibly talented, incredibly skillful people, and they were also incredibly versatile. So they were like the commandos. They were just sent off to work in joinery or solid surfacing or in electronics or wherever, because they could turn their hand to pretty much anything. Model making crossed an awful lot of disciplines. So I'm sat there in this kind of ghost of a department with no work coming in. I'm trying to generate work. I'm sending out signals saying, look, help me here. This isn't working for me. It's not working for the company. I want to do something to make this better. I can fix it, but I need help. I need support. I'd reached out to my friend, or one of the directors who I had a really good relationship with, certainly up to a point. And he was very much involved with the sales and the marketing of the company. And I said, look, I'm freaking out here. This is not good. I'm worried. I've just hired, people at your request, and now they're off doing other stuff, and they're asking me. I thought we were going to be model makers. I thought there was going to be loads of model making work, and now I'm over here sanding, or I'm over here painting boxes, or I'm over here, screwing things together that I have nothing to do with. And so they were unhappy. They were sending that to me, and I had nowhere to go with it. So I reached out to this director and said, look, I need some help here. I need your guidance or your support or something. Just give me something and I will fucking work it. His response back to me basically boiled down to, look, I don't want to have to close you down, but you need to make money and you're not making money. And I'm thinking, fucking marvelous. I asked for help and you've given me an ultimatum. Okay, put it on my back, keep pushing forward, double down, press harder, think harder, work harder as much as I can. A couple more weeks went by, still no real change. So I then reached out to my line manager and sat down with him, and I said, look, I'm at my wit's end here. I don't know what I can do more that's going to help this situation, but I'm sat here with a dead department. I'm not seeing any lifeline here. I'm just basically this kind of, recruitment agency that's hiring out my staff to other departments to take over, I'm not seeing them come back. They're fed up. They're moaning at me. They want to come back and do the jobs that they feel they were fucking hired for. And I haven't got anything for them. My line manager basically said, look, that this is not going to change. He said, this is the company we are. The bottom line is, if you put this before the managing director, he's just going to turn around and say, piss or get off the pot. Right, okay. I'll go back and see if I can. So I came up, and I went back and I just carried on and I carried on. And by this point, I wasn't sleeping well. By this point, the only thing I would ever talk to my wife about was work and frustration, and everything that came out of my mouth was just piss and vinegar and frustration and annoyance. My health was deteriorating. One day I went into work and an inquiry came through, and it was sent through by the manager of another department that was doing very well for itself. And it was just the usual, one of the things that you get from when you work in museums and visitor center model making or, attractions, is you'll get people who will come up with these amazing ideas. And you think, you know what, if we only had more dimensions to play with than the 4 that are available to us, and one of which you're wasting, if only that we could bend reality to make this thing real, it would be fucking incredible. But unfortunately, it can't be done with what we have at our disposal, and certainly the amount of money that you want to spend on it. We used to get inquiries like that all the time, and you'd honor them. You would, you wouldn't just kind of kick them into touch. You would give them, you would validate them, and you'd say, look, okay, love to, talk about this with you, but we're going to need to bring this into, this dimension of reality. So this inquiry came through, and I read it, and something in my brain just snapped. There was something that I just read and I thought, I can't do this. And I must have sat staring at the computer screen at the same drawing for a few hours. And I caught myself because I needed to go to the bathroom. And I got up, went to the bathroom, back to my office and thought, I don't want to be here. I'm just going to go and take a breath. I'm just going to go and take just step out. I'm just going to clear my head. I found a storeroom. And I went into the storeroom and I sat down and I was just gazing out of a window, and nothing happened. I just couldn't think. I couldn't pull my brain out of it. I went home. Nobody really noticed I'd gone. It was only then, and I, took a while for me to process this and talk with my wife about it, but only then did I realize I've popped. I got to the point whereby I simply could not function because I'd run so hard, so fast, tried everything. Later on, I found this wonderful book called Depression, Curse of the Strong. And it explained, and this was where I learned, oh, I've burnt out. This told me my fucking story. I read it and it told me about this quite macabre experiment that used to be done in psychology and psychiatry courses in universities. And what they would do is they would take an animal cage, like a rat's cage, and it would have a steel mesh on the floor. And that mesh was connected to a power supply.
Yeah.
And between the mesh and the power supply, there'd be a switch or a button that was on the side of the cage. And what would happen is there'd be a timer. So every 5 seconds, there would be a pulse of energy that went in and it would give a shock, not so it would kill or disable, but certainly make the inhabitant of this cage uncomfortable. And so they drop in a lab rat. And every 5 seconds, he'd get a belt. And of course, he's running around and he's running around and he's freaking out and he's freaking out. And he's looking for the exit and he's, oh, and then he'll accidentally or, by chance hit the button and then he won't get a zap for another 10 seconds. And he'll delay it and he'll run around and he'll run around. And suddenly, after a while, he learns, okay, if I keep hitting this button at this point, I'm not going to get zapped. So the rat adapts. The rat, changes its behavior. It modifies its behavior as a means of self-preservation. The next stage of the experiment is they'll disconnect the button. So now the rat's getting zapped every 5 seconds and the button doesn't work. So what happens is they set the thing going again. The rat now starts pounding the button, doesn't work. So he starts pounding it more, doesn't work. Pound, 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 doesn't work. So he then starts running around, trying to find the exit again, until in the end, it will just retreat and just sit in a corner and just get zapped and zapped and zapped and zapped. The final stage of the experiment is they'll switch off the power, they'll open the cage, and you'd expect the rat to fly out and get to freedom, and it doesn't, it just sits there. And because what's happened is it has learned that no matter what it does, it's fucked anyway. It can't control its environment anymore. It can't do anything. That feeds into the burnout. And for me, from my experience, when I was, going into this cycle and was going into this decline, the more I tried, the more I realized it doesn't matter what I do, it's not working. So I'd try harder and it wasn't working. I'd try harder and harder and harder until in the end, my limbic system just said, mate, I haven't got any more resource for you, pal. And I shut down and I was out of work. Well, I was out of action for at least 4 months, and it took a long road to recovery to get me back in to the stage where I could actually function again. So that was my first burnout, or that was my second burnout, but it's probably the less messy of the two.
Okay, now, mate. Thank you for sharing that. I apologise, I'm yawning my fucking head off. If anyone's watching this, it's not because I wasn't into your story. I was very much listening, but I've been up since 3:30. So I thought I better make some context to that. Otherwise, everyone just thinks I'm being really rude.
Let's just peel back the curtain for a second to the listeners or the watchers out there, okay? He absolutely assured me before, because I did say I don't think Michael Parkinson would in any way whatsoever treat his guests like this. And James says, oh no, mate, I've got my game face. It'll be absolutely packer. It'll be sorted. Don't worry. It'll be totally professional all the way through. And then within about 15 minutes in that, he looks like he wants a nap. So yeah,
I know you're
curtain back, game face on, let's go.
I know you're lying. I said I was going to be professional. I've never said that in my life. Oh, fucking stop. I can't stop. I feel all right, but as I'm sitting here, I've just got off another podcast as well, and I'm sitting here and I just can't stop yawning.
This is why you haven't won any awards yet. You know that, don't you? This is why,
I think I might win the Guinness Book Records for most yawns in a podcast. Mate, that story was kind of harrowing, but kind of also relatable as well. Like, you're kind of listening to it and you're like, oh my God, this is horrible. But then I reckon there was many people like me that, I'm listening to it and I'm like, God, that's horrible. I'd hate to go through that. And I'm like, hang on a minute. That makes sense. That relates. I think a lot of people would listen to that story and really, relate to it. And
I think so. Yeah. And I think as well, I mean, one of the things that I'm finding with the work that I'm doing with the various services around our authority is the fact that since lockdown, since we've come out of the just the weird reality bending craziness of COVID, we've now come back into a different workplace. Everything's the same but different. You know, we're either doing things in a different way, or we're doing things with fewer staff, or we're delivering services in a slightly different thing. I mean, I now work this, you know, while this looks like my playroom, this is also my office. It's where I kind of do all my, you know, all my safety dude stuff. But it's also where I do all me building little fucking trains of things. We kind of work now in a different way. We've now got new challenges. We've now got, as well as society, I think there's a lessening of patience. There's a lessening of empathy. I think there's a lessening of tolerance, because we've all been locked away for so long that now people have come out. I think we're trying to get used to being a society again. And with our council being public facing, serving, you know, this wonderful, glorious district of Yorkshire, we're kind of having to deal with that. We're facing that. And a lot of our staff are actually saying they're finding it very tough. They're finding it very stressful, because they don't know what they're going to face when they go into work that day. You know, they've signed up to be swimming pool staff, you know, and you think, well, how cool is that, working in a leisure centre? They shouldn't be in the position whereby they're having to be, you know, contacting the police because they're having public disturbances because people are just running out of control, you know, or library staff and that, you know, dealing with verbal abuse, or people just acting stranger than they ever did. And I think we need to be mindful of this when we're moving forward, because of the fact that work has changed. No matter how much we'd like to think that we've got it still the way it used to be, it will never be the fucking same again. Certainly not for the mid to long, you know, to the short to mid term. And we need to recognize the fact that that stress is being put onto our staff at all levels. And burnout could be a thing, because we're going to try and cover things. We are resource poor. We are talent rich sometimes, but there just maybe isn't enough talented people there. We are covering things. We are working outside of our scope, you know, and we do tend to kind of cover those gray areas and those gaps where resources might not go, but we'll fill them in because we're conscientious people, or we know that our jobs can't be done properly without somebody at least doing it. So I think, you know, and I think that, again, as you say, I think that goes across the board. I think that will affect all work.
Yeah. And it kind of comes back as well, like that example you used there, to what you said earlier, in that a lot of our response to this as how we improve our mental health crisis, well, throughout the world, really, is lacking impact. It's tokenism, a lot of it. Do you know what? I kind of look at it and I'm like, man, we're making all the same mistakes again. Like, you know, can not look at the safety profession, but just, and the health and safety profession, to put it together, even though stress technically is included in the health bracket and welfare and so on. And do you not look at that and go, no, we don't want to make those mistakes? Do you know what I mean? We want to issue some improvements that are impactful. We want to issue some influences in the workplace that deliver impact on this risk that we're trying to manage. Not just let's have a World Stress Mental Health Day. Let's have some here, read this. You know, like mental health first aid for me is a really good example. And we've got another lady coming on in a couple of months to talk about this. Kind of get really in depth on that side of things. But ultimately, I think it's a really good example of like, we're just putting a plaster over a bullet wound. Like, you know, you can have like pizza Fridays and beanbags and a fucking slide in your head office, but if the manager's a fucking bully walking around being an absolute wanker, and the deadlines to complete stuff are nearly impossible, and people are short staffed, and the attitude, the way that people talk to each other is constantly aggressive, you're constantly having to think about covering your ass or something like that. You're going to be uber stressed, and you're going to run into a brick wall at some point. But it's okay, because we have pizza Fridays, and it's just like, I look at it and I'm just like, yet again, we're just not managing the risk. We're just throwing shit at the wall and none of it's sticking.
Well, think about it this way, in that, you know, we have the working at height regulations. We'll train people on working at height, okay, and we do that to prevent them from falling off shit, Okay, imagine a company saying, okay, look, we're not going to put safety rails here, but we've got our own company ambulance, okay, that's got a fucking direct line to the hospital, so that when you smash your fucking ass into the concrete below, we will come along. We've got the most brilliant blood sponges, okay, we can mop up blood no problem, so we can take care of slip, strips and falls, and we will get you to the hospital in no fucking time.
Oh shit.
Okay, it's kind of what we're doing with mental health. We're saying, okay, look, we're not going to do shit all to modify or to address. Okay, what are the drivers? Now, I will put a caveat. Okay, I have a diagnosed condition called dysthymia. Okay, it's now known as low mood syndrome, but dysthymia just sounds more impressive. What that basically means is, if you can imagine a person's emotional range as being on 0 is beyond suicide, to 10 is they're pilling the tits off, utter euphoria, happy as fuck. You know, we all know the type, and that they annoy the shit out of us. They're not the people you want to deal with on a Monday morning. Most people will operate in the 4.5, 5.5, middle of the road. I tend to live in the 3s. Okay, I'm genuine. It takes me a lot of energy. Okay, I've got what I call an emotional debit card. Okay, I think Luke Coggan, who was on a couple of weeks ago, actually described it as being, it's like having that bucket with a hole in the bottom and you're filling it up from the top. Yeah. For me, I look at it as an emotional debit card. Okay, I'm granted at the beginning of my working week only so much emotional resilience, okay, to deal with hassles, stress, out of the box thinking, dickheads, weirdness, etc., etc. I can dip into that credit card or debit card as much as I like, okay, but I need to recharge it. I need to pay back my debts. If I go into an overdraft, I pay for it later. Okay, with what we're doing in work, I think we are just in this position whereby we're using these debit cards so much. We're stretching people, we're pushing people, and then we're saying, oh, well, we've got these services that you can use, contact them. It's like, no, what we need to be doing is saying, look, how do we get this work in such a way that it's not taxing people, that it's not draining their reserves, their reserves. It's not giving them reason to go home and cry or drink, or take it out on the kids or take it out on the wife or the dog or the cat, or worse, withdraw and then kind of go into themselves. And then before you know it, they're actually self-harming, or they're on a fucking ledge. We need to be putting these things in place that says, look, we shouldn't be taxing. It's one thing going home from work tired. Okay, that can be the byproduct of work. You can be mentally tired, you can be physically tired. But if you're so emotionally tired, that you don't have anything of yourself, depression is something that takes away the thing that makes you you. It takes away your vitality. It takes away your, you could literally just become an entity. Okay, it's the loneliest place in the universe when you're depressed, because you don't even have yourself. If we are driving people into that position through the work that we do, something is fucking wrong. And I don't see really a difference between that and somebody getting their arm cut off, or somebody losing their hearing, or white finger, or whatever it is, because we're damaging people through doing this. Yeah. And we need to get in front of it. The frustrating thing for me is the fact that all of the time I see all of these health and these mental health awareness things and all these kind of campaigns that we get in the workplace, I've never once ever seen anybody say, we've actually already got a pretty good answer for this. What we do in health and safety, our Bible is, certainly in the UK, is the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, one of the best pieces of fucking legislation ever written, because it's just so fucking versatile. It fits, it's brilliant. We can build off it. It's wonderful. The HSE also did something a while ago called the management standards.
Yep.
Now, when I returned to the company that I burnt out in, I did so on one condition. I said, this can't happen to anybody else. This must not happen to anybody else that I work with. Okay. If you're prepared to change, I'll help you do it. I'll put my health 100% into it. It's kind of how I work. But you've got to change. And he said, okay, fine, yeah, let's make it. And I just then became the health and safety, well-being guy. Looking back, was it tokenism? Probably. But in the workshop and in the workspace I was there, I found this wonderful thing called the health and safety management standards. Okay, I've got to be honest with you, they're fucking excellent. Yeah. They are really, really good. Because what they do, not just for well-being, but I'll tell you what, I'll defy anybody to say that this would not make your business work better anyway. Yeah. You look at what it actually does. It looks at what are the demands you're putting on your staff. What control do your staff have? How much ability do they have to manage and operate within their realms? What sort of support are we giving them? Are we giving them the right training, the skills, are we giving them the equipment to deliver? Are we giving them that actual time to actually do this rather than saying you've got 15 jobs to do in the space of 3? We're looking at the role. And again, it comes back to what were we expecting people to do? I mean, what I was doing in my old model making sphere, I was doing project management, I was doing marketing, I was doing a bit of everything, because if I saw a need, I just go and try and fucking fix it. My role was really just build fucking plastic models for clients, but I was left in this kind of strange vacuum to just fill that space with what I thought was necessary. How are we managing change? Well, fuck, we've just come out of a world pandemic. Oh, correction, we're still in a fucking world pandemic, folks. Spoiler alert, it hasn't gone away. How are we adapting to that? We're still working in the remote area. I mean, I was speaking to you just now before, James, wasn't I, about I delivered 2 sessions of training this week, one of which was in person, which is my natural habitat, and I could wave my arms around and make jokes and engage with people, and I could see their cues and I could see their faces and whether they're making notes and what have you. The second one was an identical course that I did online remotely. And I didn't have any of those cues. I didn't have any of those resources available for me to say, how well am I doing? I'm looking at my laptop screen with my slides on there. I can't hear anybody. I can't see anybody. I'm just in this funny little room full of trains yapping about stuff I think is interesting. And at the end, was that any good, guys? Yeah, that was great. Well, phew, fucking hell. But that's changed. That's a different way of working. Are we providing people with the skills and the support that they need for that? And finally, what are the relationships as well? Do we actually care about the people that we're working with? Do we actually know their needs? Do we really know what their drivers are? I understand that there's a line that says work and life need to be kept separate. Okay, work-life balance and all that. I get that. But when I came into the professional model making sphere, okay, all of the skills that I brought largely came from my hobby. I brought what I used to do for a living into my professional thing. If I'm now studying an NCRQ level 6. Okay, I'm not doing that on company time. I'm doing that in my own time. Okay, I'm funding that myself. The authority is more than happy for me to do that. They appreciate the fact that I'm spending my time at home doing this work. Okay, don't get me wrong, I don't begrudge them for a second. This is my future I'm investing in. But the authority is more than happy for me to then come in with those skills, and they will capitalize on that. But if I have something at home, say, if I have a difficulty in life, it's not good enough for the company to then turn around and say, well, that's none of our business. Well, it's your fucking business when I go off and do a 2-year bloody degree course in night school. Then you're fucking more than happy. You're more than happy to agree with that, because that's personal development. That's making the organization better. I'm not saying this to be confrontational. I'm not saying this to be in any way kind of front loading it, saying you don't care about us. But what I am saying is a case of to just say what happens at home is none of our business. No, I don't think it can. Yeah, I don't think you can just kind of brush it under the carpet like that. If people need support, you need them to be in a good place in order to provide that work.
I agree. Totally. I cannot stand this work-life balance bullshit. I think there is no work-life balance. I get what they're trying to say, and I agree with the notion, I suppose. But it's yet again the narrative in which it's communicated out doesn't make sense. It's not work and life. It's life, and life includes work. It's just your life, and your work is a massive proportion of your weekly life.
Yeah.
And if you have, well, here's a prime example. If I was operating machinery right now, I'm tired as fuck because my daughter in the car at 3:00 in the morning, and I didn't go back to sleep. So if I'm operating heavy machinery, if I've got to drive a HGV for 8 hours today, then trust me, my fucking life is impacting your work.
Yeah.
So as far as I can see it, and the way I try to explain it to a lot of clients is, if you refuse to build a relationship with your employee that you don't know them and that they're not comfortable to come to you and say, I'm knackered and I probably shouldn't be driving today because I didn't sleep at all last night. If you make it so they're not comfortable to say that, it's not, oh, that's his personal life and I've got no right to say it. It's not you being polite. It's not you being like respectful of their personal life. It's you now creating an unknown risk within your organization. You got no idea now that guy, girl is out on the road and they're knackered. And for me, it's one and the same. What's going on at work impacts home massively.
Well, let's flip it around. Okay. You're now self-employed. Okay. You have Risk Fluent Limited, quick plug. Okay. You're doing Project Mollitiam, quick plug. You see, I should be getting fucking money for this, mate, I tell you.
Mate, I don't even get fucking.
Okay. So can you tell me hand on heart, okay, that you'll be sitting down watching TV tonight, okay, with your family, and you're not going to think, oh shit, I should have done that, or I should have emailed that, or I need to do that tomorrow. Okay, can you tell me hand on heart you're not going to do that? Okay, so if we have workplaces that say, I'm sorry, what goes on at home is none of our fucking business, okay, then really speaking, what goes on in work shouldn't be any of our fucking business when we're at home.
Yeah.
Workplaces don't really appreciate that, because it's the case, well, actually, yeah, oh, it's a good job you sent me that email last night, otherwise I would have forgot.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, we love that anecdote. I think I can't remember, is it Kia or Hyundai or one of the companies out in Far Eastern that's actually done a ban where it's a case of if you send an email outside of business hours, it's seen as a disciplinary action because you just don't do it. You shut it down. We do not operate outside of these parameters. That's great, but we need to accept that can't always be the case. So we need to accept that while our work affects our home lives also affect our work. We can't benefit from one while smiting the other.
Yeah. And for me, I think there's something else in that I understand why you're doing that. No emails out of hours, really bad. We care about you. I understand the notion. I also think that is more tokenism than actual impactful risk management, if I'm brutally honest, in that let's say you're saying this to a team of like salespeople, right? And they kind of don't really have set hours because they're based from home. They can just do what they do, right? Now, meeting a client, doing a sale is probably restricted to working hours because you've got to arrange a meeting or whatever, right? But emails, for example, it actually might be better for, say, a parent, as a prime example, a working parent to not work 9 to 5 and babysit. A parent doesn't babysit and care for their child, be with their child, or have a 3 to 4 hour break in the middle of the day or whatever, right? So therefore they need to catch up on that email, and their own body clock, their own lifestyle, their own mental health is different from somebody else's. And I just think those blanket approaches just don't fucking work. And I remember you come back to the management standards. Like, I remember reading that for the first time years and years ago and playing around with it and being like, fuck me, this is actually really good. And a lot of that, if you did a lot of management standard, you've pretty much done a lot of like human organizational performance, human factors, behavioral stuff. You've pretty much done a lot of it already just by managing that. So, but anyway, to come back to my point, it's a really good piece of work. When I was at a previous employer, HR completely out of nowhere were like, we're going to do a stress survey. They actually said, we're doing a stress survey. And I was like, hey, as the head of safety, it might be really good for you to have a conversation with me. I'm here. This is part of my job as well. And we, oh yeah, sorry, we should have. Okay, cool. How about the HC? It's cheaper. Their management standard is good. They could do this survey, and I've heard really good stuff about it. Yeah, okay, cool. We'll do it. And we got some pretty stark responses. And the shit we were coming up with off the back of it was not dealing with the risk. And one of them was right, we're going to make a blanket ban for Zoom calls at lunchtime because we all need to respect the lunch break. And I said, look, I'm telling you fucking now, if you do that, you're just adding an hour onto my day because that call is going to move from 12 to 5. And the other call is going to move from 6 from wherever to 7. And then they were like, oh, what we're going to do is not email out of hours. Okay, fine. But the current managing director's workload, he's going to be doing nothing but emails in the day, where's all the rest of the work going? It will come out of his personal time. And I said, it's just going to be ineffective. It's going to be a complete waste of time. It doesn't work. It might work for us. It may be at a different level in the organization, but other levels it didn't work for, and it will never work for. Because what is the actual problem? Not the emails. It's not the meetings. It's what you expect from your employees to be done within a day. So deal with the workload, because that's the issue. That's the fucking issue. These blanket rules will not work because you haven't dealt with the thing that's driving the problem that you're trying to fix. So it's just, it all comes back to the same stuff that we do in safety. It's just a fucking plaster over a Grand Canyon of a fucking bullet wound. You know, it's like being shot and someone coming over with a pack of fucking plasters, like in those little pull-out ones. Just be like, "It's all right, mate, got you." And it's just, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. And then what that means is that essentially what the whole thing is lacking is empathy. It's got a distinct lack of understanding what each individual journey is. And if I'm brutally honest again, I think most of that is because that's just too fucking hard work, right? To understand every single employee, that's just too hard, particularly for these big organizations.
I think there's a societal aspect to it as well, though, James. I think where we are in society, if you think of the way that mental health and mental illness are represented, okay, I will be honest here, okay, I'm speculating with some of this, but most of the time, whenever you see a film or a drama or a soap opera or something like that, and you have a person who, and I'll speak about depression because that's my, chosen affliction.
Chosen.
It's the affliction that chose me anyway. So it's I don't suffer from it. I refuse to suffer from it. I deal with it. Some days I deal with it well. Sometimes I don't deal with it very well at all. But I don't suffer from it.
And you're like, I'm gonna go for that one. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, depression. Yeah, that makes me moody and interesting. Yes, okay. I mean, there were Kurt Cobain and Lane Staley. Yeah. So depression is my little circle of interest because I've got it whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
Whenever you see somebody in a character in a movie or in a drama or in some kind of documentary or docurama thing, and they have depression, okay, you can guarantee they're going to be a plot. It's going to be a plot twist, isn't it? Because they're going to either get worse or they're going to go off on one or they're going to have everything. And what we actually need to be doing is maybe saying, actually, you know what? There's people who are dealing with depression around us all the time. Okay, whether we like it or not. Okay. They're out there. The moment I say that I have depression to a person or I suffer from depression, okay, you can see the way that their face changes more often than not. They'll, okay. It's like, well, until I told you that I had depression, you didn't realize you were just treating me like a normal, straightforward person. Now I've said depression, all of a sudden I can see that you kind of recoil. You think, okay, what can I say? What can't I say? You can say fucking anything, mate. Okay. I'm dealing with this. I'm a big boy. Okay. It's okay to not be okay. We walk among you people. Okay. Us wonky brain people, we walk among you. We're out there. All right. 1 in 4 people in their life is going to have a mental illness or a psychological issue. Okay. Like it or not. All right. 1/4 of the population. We need to normalize it. Okay. We need to not be afraid of people who are, dealing with mental illness or psychological conditions. Okay, we need to actually have those conversations. A good point to that, my manager a couple of months ago actually emailed me because he was being, again, from the higher ups. He was basically being told, you need to reach out to your staff and you need to make sure and find out what they need and find out what they're and do this and let them know this and let them know that. And he just goes, Al, what do you need from me? And that, I know that I've been very, very frank with my manager on that. He completely understands where I'm coming from. He goes, Al, from a point of view of somebody, dealing with mental illness, what do you need from me? And I said, for you to listen to me when I need you to listen. That's it. I just need you to accept the fact that I might not be completely right in the head sometimes. I'll try and give you a warning. If I can see it coming, I will have that conversation with you and I'll say, look, get ready, choppy waters. Okay, let's put something in place so I'm not, exposing anybody to risk, because obviously, people rely on my advice, they rely on my judgment, they rely on my, perception of what's going on around. What you don't need is somebody in full-blown EOR mode. But, okay, in fact, actually, great little point, just as an aside, all right, when I say about how people should be around folk with mental illness or, with depression, etc., what I will always point them to, okay, watch Winnie the Pooh, all right, great, good opportunity for you there, because I know you like a good children's movie, James. Watch Winnie the Pooh. All right, see how Pooh and Tigger and Piglet and Roo all act around Eeyore. Okay, Eeyore is chronically depressed. Okay, he doesn't know why he's sad. It's his birthday. Okay, he's just sad. They treat him like a normal bloody person. They don't exclude him. They don't talk around him. They don't say, "Oh, should we? We're going to have a party. Should we invite Eeyore?" No, he's going to piss all over everything. He's going to be miserable. No, Eeyore's just part of the gang. Okay, he is who he is. Okay, so anybody wants to know how to be around somebody who deals with mental illness, watch Winnie the fucking Pooh.
Wow.
All right, he will teach you. You will learn a lot. Eeyore is my spirit animal.
Wow, I've never. The second you said it, I was like, "Oh yeah," but like I've never ever put those together. Yeah, he is totally depressed. 100. But I think as well, Alex. I think I spoke about this with Asha when she came on the podcast, and again, similarly to yourself, really openly and honestly talked about her story. There is this perception that if you say I live with depression, they think you're going to be like Eeyore all the time. Hello, like you say, and just piss on the party and just don't invite Alex because he'll just bum everyone out. Like, no, it's like I really liked when we also interviewed a different person in the mental health space called Robert Manelson, and he describes it as a continuum. So it's a flow, ups and downs and ups and downs, and you have lines. To your point, like very similar to your debit card, right? You go over this line at the top, you're in ecstasy, it's a really happy place where for me, it's like, this is really cheesy, but for me, I have a couple of happy places. One, when my daughter voluntarily gives me a cuddle, like just runs over it, and I could just sit there for a lifetime. And secondly, sitting on my own or with my family watching Star Wars. Like, that's my fucking happy place, right? So my flow is like right up there. And then some days I'm just down. I'm I might not be depressed. I'm just having a low fucking day. And then sometimes those lines can go into below the lines and go into like depression or anxiety or any kind of mental health condition, right? So you have this continuum. The problem is when you are below a line more often than not, and when you're above a line more often than not, that's when we need to start thinking, okay, we've got to take some professional help here, right? But ultimately, I think the problem that exacerbates the problem is that we don't know how to deal with these people. Exactly like you were saying, these people that are weird and they've got mental health issues, we think they're just going to be in a corner crying 24/7, and you say anything to them, they're going to jump out the window. Now, there may be days like that. There really might be days like that where nothing you can say will help the person, but you just have to be there, right? But they're not like that 24/7. Maybe some people have it really bad and they are kind of like Eeyore a bit, but the 90% of people that deal with this on a day-to-day basis, you wouldn't fucking know. So just treat them like normal people. But I think having a little bit of empathy, but also kind of like getting curious about the person, I think that's something we've really missed in the workplace, is building these relationships. To my earlier point, hi Alex, nice to meet you. Welcome to the team. Tell me about yourself. What do you do? What do you like to do? And then the next time we speak, leaders coming around, walking around, going, let me get to know you, Alex. Partner. Do you have a partner? Yeah, I have a partner. Yeah, cool. How you doing? The more you get to know this person, the more you can pick up on little cues. I pick up when my wife's having a low day, 100%. And she doesn't even need to say anything. I'm just like, yeah, it's there.
Yep.
And we don't equip our managers to do that. We don't give them the tools, the resources, the knowledge to do that. I think we can send them on stress awareness. And I just don't think that stuff delivers impact. What we should be doing, yes, teaching them the little signals and the little signs of somebody having a particular low day, 100%. And most stress awareness course does that. But we need to teach them to build relationships with their staff. And
that's exactly it. And I think when you've got those relationships, when you've got that, I mean, just to kind of go back to your previous point, James, and I think to put a slightly different spin on it, just imagine, okay, if you've got a headache. Okay, you go into work and you've got a headache. Okay, and then you tell people that you've got a headache. And then number one, they all start acting a bit weird around you. Oh, he's got a fucking headache. I don't get a fucking headache. He might start acting all fucking weird. He might be reaching for the fucking Nurofen soon. And then after a while, people stop talking to you because they don't know how to deal with the guy with the headache. So just imagine you're the guy with the headache. Okay. You're already feeling a bit shitty. Okay. And now nobody's fucking talking to you, or they're talking around you, or they're kind of, say, oh, can we do this? Well, I don't know. He's got a fucking headache, and is he going to be fucking go around blagging paracetamol off everybody? And that, just imagine how that is for the person. Okay, so how does that even help them? Okay, you're coming into work, and it was a weird thing for me when I returned to work, because I, in the time between me going off sick and me coming back, and it was unrelated to the illness. Okay, but that's when I shaved my head. Partly because I was developing a little flesh yarmulke and that, and I refused to be the guy with the cat's arse on his head. So it's a case of, right, it all fucking comes off. So I walked into the workshop, okay, and the staff turned around and he looked at me, and I'm just like, yes, I have shaved my head. It came free with the lobotomy. Oh, okay. Yeah, and you could see that they weren't sure how to deal with me. Number one, I looked completely different, but number two, this is a guy that completely blew a fuse, and he's all a bit weird now, and he's kind of, he's been to some dark places, and it's a case of, look, I'm still me. I might be a bit more fucking miserable on the outside than I appear, but I'm still me. All right, I'm back. I'm slowly getting back into it. Talk to me. And we did talk, and we had conversations, and I was perfectly open about it. And I would, when I'd say, look, there's going to be some days, guys, when I'm just going to be fucking not in it at all. I mean, I'll just recount one particular story, because I don't want it to make it sound like it's what we're dealing with is scary, okay? But I think there was some good that came from it. It was during my phase return. I was still getting my feet underneath me. I was still getting into the flow. Some days I would wake up and I go, yeah, I think I can do this. I can go into work, I get on the bus, I go down, what have you. And there were other days when it was a case of, I would rather just lie in my own fucking excrement than face getting out of bed. Okay, you just get into that black mentality of I just don't want to be. I don't want to die. I just don't want to live.
Yeah.
Certainly not like that. Okay. So this particular day, I'd been off for a couple of days, and I thought, no, I need to get back in. I need to show that I'm committed. I need to show that I'm doing this, etc., etc. They're going out of their way for me. I'm all building all this shit up in my head. And I went in, and as I'm getting near on the bus, my mood is just cratering. I'm just going into this. No, I'm borderline full-blown panic attack. I'm just like, oh Jesus, I went into the production office, and one of my colleagues had worked with him the whole time I was at this company, now 12 years. And he's like, "You all right?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Yeah, and he said, and he started asking, and bless him, he was taking what I was giving him, and he was trying to solve what I was saying, because I wasn't really making a great deal of sense. I was seeing everything around me was wrong, everything around me was bullshit, everything around me was fucking going, and he's trying to, with all the best intentions in the world, with all the best will in the world, and loving to bits, he's still a friend, great guy, but he's trying to solve and he's trying to fix my head while I'm coming out with this complete fucking nonsensical, miserable gibberish. The way I can describe how my head was at the time, okay, I don't know whether anybody's ever experienced a panic attack. They can all come in different flavors, but the type that I was having on this particular day was, if you can imagine, okay, being your head, okay, being a room. And on every surface of the room, whether it be the walls, the floor, the ceiling, the door, the fucking windows, the fucking everything, are lots and lots of little TV screens, okay? And on each of these TV screens, okay, you've got memories, you've got fears, you've got fucking things going on around you, you've got fucking school life, you've got things that you fucking should have said back in 2009, you've got relationships with people, everything you've ever had in your life, both real and also distorted because of the illness that you're dealing with. And they're all playing. And some of them are in good reception, and others are a bit grady and a bit kind of fucking white noisy, but they're all playing full volume. And you've got one remote control, and you're trying to, as soon as you turn one off, another three come on. And then on the outside of this room, somebody's yelling in, "What are you watching? Are you all right? Oh, don't watch that. That's okay. Yeah, but that one there's silly." And you're trying to control this absolute cacophony, white noise, thoughts, bullshit, crashing around inside your head. And somebody with all the will in the world, bless them, was trying to help me switch off those little TVs. And it's like, I blew up and just ran the fuck away. All this is to say the best intentions sometimes can lead to, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's not to put people off, because the road out of hell is also paved with good intentions. What really needed to happen from that, I at least then had the opportunity to sit down with them and say, okay, look, this is what didn't work. I'm sorry I kind of blew up like that. I'm sorry you weren't prepared for that. I'm sorry I blew up at you like that. I didn't mean to. It was nothing personal. I was more lucid the next time I saw him a few days later and said, look, this is where I'm at. And I got to explain it. And I got to actually say to him, look, there was nothing you could have done that day. All right. Maybe you could have given me a cuddle. All right. That might have been the only thing. I wouldn't put money on it. Okay. But there was nothing you could have done or said that day that was going to get me into that room and present and functioning and in a good place. Okay. But the good thing that's come out of this is the fact that you and I are now having this conversation. Whereas before we didn't have that conversation. We didn't have that mechanism. Once we understood that, and once he understood, okay, if I see Alex as a bit like this, okay, I might just say, you know what, mate, don't worry about it today. Take a break, head off, do what you need to do. Okay. Don't challenge it, don't anything. But we actually then had a good working relationship because of the fact that I knew that he understood better where I was coming from. And so I didn't feel like I had to live up to anything with him. It was a case of I could be open, I could be honest, and I could be in that position to say, I can't do this today, man. And I would know, there you go. It's okay. That's okay. We'll fix it. We'll work around it. It's not the end of the fucking world like your head is telling you it is. And that to me that's what we need more of. We need to have those open conversations to say, look, what is it like? How are you feeling? And not be afraid of asking questions like that, because the person that you're asking might not have the answer. But what it does show is that you actually give a shit. You actually do care. You want to know. And it's a case of, look, if you do find something out, if you do learn something, like, let me know. Because I want to make sure that we're on this journey with you together. That we are on your side. We are here to try and help you. Because that person normally is craving normality. They are craving routine sometimes. They are craving that stability of work. Their home life might actually be a complete smoldering crater. They might be relying on work, to keep them sane, to keep them on the rails. Yeah. So the more that work can do this, and again, it comes back to the, work affects home. As much as we don't like to convince it doesn't, it fucking does. And work benefits from that. Home affects work, but work tries to think it doesn't and would like to think it can cut it out. Sorry, you can't get one without the other. And I think this is where I think we need to have those conversations. Like you say, have the conversations before Mental Health Awareness Week, rather than, tokenistic bullshit ones in the middle, or, oh, look, here's a load more resources next time you feel like jumping off a cliff. That I think is the way we need to move forward.
And there's another bit to that, I think, Alex, like, for the manager to be enabled to say, it's okay, Alex, you need to take the day. The organization needs to build slack into that process, that they're not massively reliant on every single individual person. Like, so for example, like if one person, I remember when I used to be a chef back in the day, right? If one person didn't turn up at the pub, fucking all shit hit the fan. Like, we had no slack in the process. Like, if you're a manager in that position, it becomes very difficult at that point to have that understanding, empathetic approach, because you don't have the slack in the system to enable me as a manager to say, Alex, you take the day. So then you're forced into a situation where you've now got a person that is really struggling with normal day, and you're going to put them in a highly complex, highly stressful situation, because all work is stressful and all work is mostly quite complicated, complex and messy and full of loads of different personalities. You're now going to throw them in that position, or you're now going to have them operate heavy machinery, or you're now going to have them build a fucking house, or whatever. And humans make mistakes when they're in their best selves, let alone when they're in their low selves. So, when I see all these stuff, like, don't get me wrong, we've kind of bashed Mental Health Awareness Week and all of that stuff, right? We spoke about this offline, but to kind of Crystal and Elisa's, you mentioned it in the podcast actually, didn't you? To mention, like Crystal and Elisa's podcast, they did episode on Colin Nottage's podcast, Interest and Healthy podcast. There's a lot of podcasts.
podcast.
They said, like, to your point, what they said there is like, it's kind of nice to have it, but I wish we didn't need it. It's exactly the same for this, like you said earlier. So use this week to have conversations about being proactive and having impact, not let's throw some more resources at it. Let's do a fucking webinar, awareness or whatever, which is just bullshit. It's just nothing.
What is it we say in terms of safety? Okay, we've kind of come to the point, certainly within the safety circles that you and I operate in, that zero harm is just not achievable. Okay, it's perfect. You know, what was it Jem Hill said in our workshop at PM, and that, you know, sometimes as far as the special boat services are concerned, better is better than best. Okay, you can waste a lot of time trying to be perfect, and you can actually completely miss the target anyway. Okay, what do we try and do in safety? We try and build resilience. We try and provide capacity to fail. Okay, so that when something doesn't work, it's not catastrophic. Okay, the same could be, you know, needs to be the same for mental health.
Yeah.
Okay, having every single thing on that one person who's running it ragged, who's desperately trying to save the fucking world, and it's a characteristic of people when they're on burnout, because they will literally run around looking for things to put on their back to try and make things right and to try and fix. To not have everything weighted on that one fucking person, or have the system in place to say, okay, I can see what's going on here. Let's have a sit down. Let's have a conversation. Okay, rather than wait for them to go boink and off to employ with you.
Yeah.
Okay. We need to have that prescience. We need to have that look. World Mental Health Week is coming up. Let's get a load of people together and sit down and have a conversation with them and say, what would you like us to actually look at in World Mental Health Week? How about that? Rather than just kind of do this to you, you know, and throw these things at you. What do you want us to do? How would you like to maybe kind of, you know, start the conversation moving forward? What do you want from us, or how can we help you help us? You know, and that's
questions
to me
is what makes work hard for you.
Yeah.
Like, particularly from a stress and mental health well-being point of view, like, what makes work hard for you? How can we make that better? If you ask somebody what makes work hard or what annoys you at work, they'll fucking tell you, trust me. Yep. They'll turn around and say, this happened, that happened, this happened. And then you'll find out loads, absolutely loads. And then you can start focusing on stuff that's causing the stress. But everything we're saying here, right, to your point, is so closely related to, like, organizational resilience, safety management, risk management. All of this is one. Like, if you're going to do anything, you know, as an organizational leader, is start considering all this stuff holistically and not individual standalone points. Like, we'll manage costs, right? And there's a focused cost standalone bit that we need to do 100%. And same with working at height, and same with all of these individual risks, right? And even stress, there is a standalone focus bit that we will do with it. But ultimately, when we're talking about the humans that connect all of these things together and all of the processes, the cost, the working at height, the stress, all into one, which delivers ultimately a successful operation or a failed operation, which is ultimately what we're trying to do as an organization, then they're all holistic. They're all connected as one system. So taking a step back, asking yourself, it's not all about having a solely resilient company, because I personally think if you're resilient, you're going to be terribly inefficient and you're probably going to go out of business, because resilient is thorough, it's slow, it's loads of slack, and it's not efficient. So you need a bit of efficiency, but it's about balancing that. Is looking at, like, okay, here we can be efficient, but here, you know, actually, I'm not comfortable being efficient from a stress point of view. You know, with our people and their workload, we're going to be resilient. We're going to build in slack, right? But with, I don't know, finance or something else, we're going to be efficient, right? And it's just this silo mentality of each individual risk. Like, we're a one problem nation, I say sometimes, that we can only focus on one problem. Right, it's COVID, so we are focusing solely on COVID. It's Mental Health Awareness Week. Right, we're focusing on mental health. And what do? Let's do a mental health this and a mental health that. Like, or you could just zoom out and look at all of these contributing factors to people making errors, to people who are stressed, to people, you know, who are struggling through the day. All of those things are connected when it comes to.
Look at that. Look at that plane crash that occurred. Was it Austria a few years ago? And that pilot that literally steered an airplane into a mountain.
Yeah.
Okay, he was flying that plane perfectly safely. That plane was perfectly functional. There was nothing wrong with that. The safety people must have been thrilled to bits with that airplane and the procedures that he was following, right up to the point where he steered it into the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a safe airplane being flown by a pilot who knew what he was doing, who was flying it perfectly competent. He got it off the fucking ground and he got it to where he wanted it to go. But his perception, his emotions, his stability were not there. So how can you say that one didn't affect the other?
Yeah.
We build in human, we're starting, and thank God we are getting more and more switched onto this now, but we are building in human factors, to safety. And it's not just about process. It's not just about following the fucking rules, because the person that's following the rules is actually a sentient fucking being that does have a life, that does have influences, that does have challenges, that does have fucking problems. Mm-hmm. We're relying on these very complicated individuals to do these monotonous or relatively constrained tasks, with the management system operating it being one of the most insanely complexly, mysteriously enigmatic kind of computational devices that's in the known universe. But we expect that to be perfectly fine. That's just going to do the job that we require of it. Okay. Go on.
No, I was just going to add to your point. We expect it to never fail.
Yeah.
Never ever have an error ever. And if you do, we're going to punish you.
Yeah. And guess what? It fucking does.
Yeah.
So,
Alex, we've been going for over an hour, mate. Is there anything you want to plug? If not, do you want to leave us with a little last kind of closing point? Or you can do both if you would like.
What I would recommend is anybody that's ever experienced depression, and I'll ping you the link for it once we're off, James, because I can't remember the exact author's name, okay, which is a shame because it was a fucking brilliant book. I will recommend anybody that's ever dealing with or concerned about burnout, or anybody that's concerned about depression in the workplace, okay, have a look at a book. It's called Depression, The Curse of the Strong. Okay, I'll provide James with a link so we can put it in the show notes at the end. The other thing I would always say, and I know it sounds like a cliche, and that it's okay to be okay. All right. It's okay to be fucking struggling. It's okay. If it's a sign of weakness to reach out for help, why is it so fucking hard? All right. Especially as lads. All right. Because we're not very good at this. Use your emotions. We're given our emotions for a reason. Stop bottling them up. Okay. It's okay to not be okay. What's the point in being given all these fucking emotions if you're not supposed to use them? All right. Blokes have two emotions, happy and cry. And you're only allowed to cry at football matches. Bullshit. All right. It's fine. And finally, talk. I know that sounds really trite and really simple, but start having it's like with what we're saying in safety. Okay. Start having quality conversations. Okay. Proper conversations. Maybe not in the meeting room. Maybe do it in a coffee shop. Okay. Have a conversation with your staff. Have a conversation with your colleagues in that. It doesn't have to be a formal one. It's just a case of how are we doing? Anything, just have that conversation. If somebody is struggling, do reach out. You might not be able to help them, but the fact that you're reaching out makes the fucking world of difference to them. And they will remember that forever. That's what I would basically say.
Wow. Well done, mate.
How about that?
Yeah. Mic drop, if you could drop them. But mine's attached to a boom, so we can't drop it. But maybe don't drop that mug. Jeez.
No, it's my John Shuttleworth mug. It's great.
Alex, thank you very much for coming on.
You're more than welcome.
Shouldn't have left it so long, really, should we? But hopefully this has worked out. It's quite timely, and it will come out around Mental Health Awareness Week or whatever it's called, which will be a first for Rebranding Safety. We've never put anything out timed with any of these days or weeks or months. I don't know whether that's
honoured
or subconscious. I'm not sure. But thank you very much, mate. I really enjoyed that chat.
No, you're more than welcome, and I hope it does kind of prove useful in that, and thought provoking. So
I think it will for sure. Okay, peeps, hope you enjoyed that conversation with Alex. Thank you very much, Alex, for coming on the podcast, and thank you very much for speaking so honestly about your experience with burnout and your own mental health. I know it takes a lot for someone to talk so honestly. So on behalf of the listeners, me and everyone at Risk Fluent and Rebranding Safety, we absolutely thank you for coming on and telling your story. Hopefully you've all kind of found that helpful, enlightening, or supportive maybe for you. You know, it's a topic that might make you feel many different ways, but ultimately I hope it's brought some value. I hope you have a lovely day. Don't forget, if you need any help from us at Risk Fluent, then go to www.riskfluentlimited.com. Or you can just drop me a message. You can email me at james@riskfluentlimited.com. All the details in the description below, on the show notes below, wherever you're listening. Or if you've got me on LinkedIn, just drop me a DM. Catch you next week. Safe.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and its guests and do not necessarily reflect the position of the companies. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are examples only based on limited and dated open source information and should not be utilised in real life as the only solution available. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the companies. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic or otherwise, without prior written permission from James MacPherson.